Hmm?
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Has it ever crossed your mind that you're far too young for me?
It crossed my mind that you might consider that a possibility, yeah.
Quite apart from the fact that you're a student.
I'm not trying to pressure you into anything, Miss Cross. I'm surprised you brought it up so bluntly.
I just want to make sure.
We've become friends, haven't we?
Yes.
Good. And, the truth is, neither one of us have the slightest idea where this relationship is going. We can't predict the future.
We don't have a relationship, Max.
But we're friends.
Yes, and that's all we're going to be.
That's all I meant by relationship. You want me to grab a dictionary?
No, I just want to make sure that we understand each other.
I understand. You're not attracted to me. C'est la vie.
Max, you're 15 years old. Attraction doesn't enter into it.
If you say so. Look, all I'm getting at is that I've never met anyone like you. So you can take that for whatever it's worth.
I think I can safely say I've never met anyone like you either.
You haven't, have you? Want to shake hands?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Film Bros Podcast. My name is Isaiah Lucas, and I am joined by my co-hosts.
Abraham.
And Nick.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
Can't complain. I'm doing great.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
And you?
I'm doing good as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Feeling mighty fine after watching this film.
Yeah.
Feeling nostalgic a little bit
I don't know if I would say nostalgic.
about a childhood you never had.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe in that aspect of, like, maybe just wanting to be a kid. And I was going to say come of age again, but Wes Anderson has always kind of hit on this theme in his movies where, like, you're never too old to come of age. And, like, I think of, like, a movie like The Royal Tenenbaums, where the dad, who is, like, on his deathbed, is, like, trying to forge relationships with his children that he never had, and, like, in turn kind of comes of age at the end of his life, you know? And, like, how that's kind of just a process. So I guess I can't necessarily say that I wanted to come of age again, because maybe I always am coming of age.
You will, you are, you have been.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about the movie that we're talking about today, because this is, like, one of my most, maybe I should say my least watched Wes Anderson films. And if you can't tell by the title, or if you didn't stick around to the end of the last episode, we're talking about I think it came out in 98.
Yep.
Yeah, 1998. Came out, 1998, a film called Rushmore. And it was written by Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
And directed by Wes Anderson. And this is his second film in his filmography, and it is a slept-on one, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
A lot of people really, lean into the Grand Budapest Hotel or Royal Tenenbaums, Moonrise Kingdom, his later entries where, like, his style would just
Continue.
get perfected.
Yeah, I was reading some reviews on Asteroid City saying that might be his magnum opus, his best one yet.
Oh, yeah.
And it's crazy to me to see how far he's come. I like the rawness of this one.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a lot of Bottle Rocket in that very, like, because you see his DNA, but it's not as refined.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost is, and especially with this movie, it's that way because we're dealing with a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Who is being creative and finding outlets for his creativity and loneliness kind of deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of adds to that quirkiness that I love so much about Wes. And I love seeing where he's came from to where he's at now.
Yeah, me too. And it's always a really, I don't know why, it's always just so inspiring to me, because being able to know this guy's journey, him and Owen, like knowing both of their journeys and like where they started. They were literally just friends in college that said, let's try to write a movie.
And they did.
And they did it. And somehow like they started with the short film, gained some buzz, made a first movie with one another, flopped horribly, but it had that like that cult following, that core audience that really believed in what it was that they were trying to create. And then they got somehow a bigger budget, another deal to make another movie, and this was the one that kind of catapulted him into the career that they both have now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Owen Wilson doesn't necessarily appear as an actor in the film, but he's got writing credits here as well as producing credits, I think. And then, like, look at these guys' careers now. These guys are household names.
Names.
And I don't know, I guess it's inspiring to me because when I look at where they came from, it feels attainable. You know? It doesn't feel like this, like Nepo baby thing.
Where it's like you got to start with $1 million.
Yeah, like having the Donald Trump, my father gave me a small loan of $1 million type, story. Or like having a family member that's in the industry already, so you can get in there, Yeah. Like these guys started from like the grassroots and
film school.
Yeah, and then now look at where they are. But yeah, I always really enjoy watching this movie because I feel like it's Wes's most comedic film.
That's crazy.
It's one of his funniest. In my opinion.
Have you seen all of his films? Is there one that you're missing? Because I am missing quite a few. I haven't seen Royal Tenenbaums. I haven't seen Grand Budapest Hotel.
I think I have seen all of them.
And you can confidently say this
Have you seen Asteroid City?
Yeah.
Yeah, he owns it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can say that, to me, this is his funniest one.
Wow. Okay.
And it's just because it has more of these like elements of like slapstick comedy as well as like wit to it, like and like stupid little puns and everything, which I'm sure we'll hit on in later categories. And not only that, like you look at the premise of the story where you are taking a 15-year-old kid and a 50-year-old man and making them fight one another for the love of a teacher, and it's like that on its face value is just hilarious in general.
It is.
And then you get a guy like Bill Murray who like already is so funny as it is, and getting him to come in and just give his, take and spin on the story just adds so much more flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoy watching this one. I have a lot of fun with it. And I have to say it's my least watched one because whenever I got into Wes's films, it was with Grand Budapest. But I always returned to Moonrise Kingdom for some reason. Like that was that was the one where I was like, this is the film for me.
Really?
I liked Moonrise Kingdom a lot. And now since I've gone back and watched all of his other ones, I'm like, Bottle Rocket.
I still enjoy Bottle Rocket.
Fun,
like if you were to pick his live action stuff, but I think Bottle Rocket is shot into the top to me.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too.
What is I'm just looking at his movies right here. What is the Darjeeling?
The Darjeeling Limited.
Yeah.
That's I think it came out in 2007.
Yeah, it came out in 2007.
It's a film about three brothers that go on this trip in India because their father died, and they know that their mom is like somewhere in India. It's another one of those films one of his films that I have watched the least. Like I think I've only watched it once, and I own it. So like I should maybe go back.
Yeah,
to it
that Adrian Brody guy. I know him from the French District.
Jason Schwartzman is in this one too.
Yeah, and again, Wes Anderson's this guy that once he picks people, they're pretty much in him all.
Yeah.
Like you get Owen Wilson.
All the homies eat.
Yeah, really. And then you get Bill Murray's pretty much in every single one of them.
Yeah.
I even think he's been liking Edward Norton.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Norton plays in the dog, and one of the dogs in...
Yeah,
even
Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, Bryan Cranston too.
Bryan Cranston's in Isle of Dogs, and now he was in Asteroid City.
Yes.
I don't know if he was in French Dispatch or not, but yeah.
There's so many characters.
Yeah,
French Dispatch is
and that's
crazy.
again, that's one of the things that I love about Wes Anderson films is not only that it's like it's stylized, right? It's pretty to look at, but also Martin Scorsese has a quote that I'm probably going to butcher where he's very standoffish to new films because the actual images don't convey meaning anymore. But like whenever you look at a film like Rushmore, there's style to the way that it's shot, but then there's also like visual storytelling as well. Like I'm thinking of the scene whenever Max and Miss Cross are in the they're filling up the aquarium.
They're feeding the fish.
Feeding the fish,
Yes.
and like the camera is following them from outside, and it's dollying left. And every time they're together, they're inside one window.
Yes.
But then as soon as the subject of her dead husband comes up,
Separated.
then it's separated, and there's a line drawn right between them.
Yes.
And then she starts to talk about how, she's trying to get over him and stuff like that. And then they merge back into one window. So it's kind of like, oh, I might have a shot here now.
I didn't notice
this
that.
line is not necessarily, I can kind of cross it because she's trying to get over it.
Here's the craziest thing, and it works for a guy like me who never recognizes that stuff. Subconsciously, I felt as she wasn't in the frame, like right as they talked about the dead husband, I was like, ooh. Like I felt almost isolated and alone, just like how Max was probably feeling like, oh, I don't have a chance. She's got a husband. Oh wait, he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, she's not in the frame anymore. It feels weird. Like just subconsciously, I could understand the meaning behind the scene.
Yeah, and
which is I think what you're trying to talk about.
Yeah, and he's just got tons of stuff like that where if you are not catching on to the story in like a storytelling aspect where you're paying attention to the dialogue and things like that, then there's a whole visual story as well. And I'm a real big fan of his, and I'm excited to talk about Rushmore with you guys.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we'll go ahead and start diving in. Rushmore is about a 15-year-old kid named Max Fisher who is going to a prep school academy named Rushmore. And he is, by Dr. Guggenheim's words, the worst student they have.
I know. Surprised me with how much he actually does.
Yeah. And he's like failing all of his classes, but he's really into, creating tons of extracurricular activities and clubs and things. And he's just, wants to do everything but his schoolwork, which what kid doesn't, right? Like every kid wants to go do other things than do their homework and do good in school, right? Because school's boring sometimes.
I'm just gonna say something. Seeing him do all those things made me think so bad of him. I was like, dude, this kid's immediately. I hate to say it like this, but immediately this kid's gonna be a dick. Is what I thought. I thought he was gonna use those extracurricular activities to be like, oh, I'm this. You gotta respect me. I'm the head of this. And just 'cause he doesn't do anything for school, like that's why he's so good. And immediately I did not like that.
Mm.
It was it's crazy.
Yeah, I think you have this stereotype of like the character being like actually I'm the head of the chess club. And
Yeah.
But Max is a loser, like in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
He is not a cool guy. And I think that's done purposefully in the film. I think he's the head of all these clubs and creator of all these clubs because
he's just filling the void.
He just
kind of.
he doesn't know what it is that he wants, and like is trying to figure out what it is that he wants. And so he goes through and creates all these things, thinking that this might be the thing, and it never is. So he's failing his classes. He's got a ton of hobbies and things that he's really into that he's trying to figure out what might work for him. And one day he encounters a new teacher that starts teaching at Rushmore named Miss Cross, and starts to sort of develop a crush on her and starts to fall in love with her. And while that happens, a man named Herman Bloom, who's played by Bill Murray, also starts to he went to Rushmore whenever he was a kid and now he's like the owner and operator of this factory. He's super rich,
Mhm.
you know, and gives a lot of money to the school and everything like that. And so he knows a lot of the staff, and he also sets his eyes on Miss Cross. And they start to develop a relationship with each other as well. And before we know it, a 15-year-old and a 50-year-old man are fighting for the attention of one school teacher in very different contexts. And it's just a funny movie just to sit down and enjoy. It's like an hour 30, which is like...
And it's got so much stuff.
Yeah, and it's chocked full of just fun. Yeah. So I'm excited to dive into it with you guys. It's currently streaming on MGM Plus.
Never
which
heard
I don't know who subscribes to that, but if you got it, then it's streaming there. And if you have that subscription, you probably have like linked it to like your Prime subscription or something like that, because you can also stream it there if you have those things linked. I'm lucky enough to own it on the Criterion Collection. I picked it up on a summer sale one day and watched it that way. And I think I let Nick borrow it. Did you end up renting it?
Yeah, I just rented it.
Okay. So check it out. If you have those subscriptions, rent it. It's a fun watch. I really recommend it. And if it's one of those Wes Anderson movies that you haven't seen, that you've been looking for an excuse to do so, take this as your excuse and go do it, because it's a great watch. It's
Test
fun.
it out.
So obviously there's going to be spoiler warnings ahead. So if you want to avoid that type of thing, pause it or come back and hear what we have to say about the film. So as always, let's go ahead and start off with our first favorite scene. For me, it is the intro. And I kind of lump in the intro alongside Bill Murray giving his speech and the whole like montage of all the clubs he's in and all that stuff. Like, I just lump all those in together.
Okay.
But the film opens up and we are behind this like
teacher, man.
Yeah, we're like behind this like velvet curtain, and it opens up before us, and the camera is kind of like swaying in, and there's like we're in some sort of prep school. All these kids are wearing like blue Oxford shirts. There is a guy up on the board writing a math equation and stuff like that, and there's, you know, tons of people asking questions about this math equation that the teacher is currently writing on the board. And then an unknown voice says, "What about that math problem over there?"
And the camera
looks over there, and it's like this super elaborate geometry equation that says extra credit in like big all caps letters.
Yeah.
And it kind of flicks back to the teacher, and the teacher is like, "Oh, that's just extra credit. We don't need to worry about that." And then the voice again is like, "Well, like, how much extra credit is it worth if we solve it?"
He's like, what?
And the teacher eventually is like, "I think I could confidently say that if any of you guys solve that question, because it's like one of the most impossible questions in all of math in the United States, I can confidently say that none of you would, if you solve it, you would never have to pick up a math book again in your life." And
The kids are like, yo,
yeah, the kids are all like, "Whoa, that's crazy." Yeah. And then all of a sudden, someone says, "Max, would you care to try it?" And this is where this is where we get introduced to Max Fisher. He's like reading a newspaper in class. He's got like a little cup of tea on his desk and a book and everything. And he just we see him put his newspaper down, and he says, "I'll give it a try." He folds it up and kind of walks up with his tea and takes a sip. And
Again, like that would piss me off if I saw a student coming up with a cup of tea.
You just think he's cocky?
Yeah, I guess so.
he has a cockiness to him, but it also comes off as like ambition. And I think that's what I like about his character, is that like he has this feeling of being put together and like figuring things out. And I think that's why Bill Murray's character gets attracted to him in the first place too, because he even says like, "What's the secret?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You just look like a guy that's got it all figured out." And he says, "Well, I just think that if you really want to be good at something, you find out what it is and you do it for the rest of your life. For me, that's going to Rushmore." And so like
Come work for me.
Yeah, so like for him, he is just like this like beacon of wisdom in a 15-year-old, and this 50-year-old is looking at him and being like, man, you seem like you have everything figured out, and here I am, this, multimillionaire, and I feel like my life has fallen apart.
Life is seriously falling apart.
Yeah. So he has this like sort of charisma that is attractive to people who are looking, and I think it exudes like all throughout the film, and it makes me like him. He is just a standout character who is like, he's different from everybody else, and he's gonna be the guy again that stands out among the rest.
No, yeah, 100%. And you can tell he is he is that kid from the introduction that we get from him. He's gonna stand out, and I'm not saying that's bad, but the way that he just presents himself just makes me just angry. I don't know why.
He's a yuppie. I want to smack him around.
Too ambitious, hate it.
I don't know.
Lower your expectations.
I get it. There are some scenes where he seems kind of like jerkish, where it's like he's like, "Oh, Latin, I've been trying to get that thing closed forever," and then he's immediately like, "Oh, Latin, this is a big part of our lives now. Like, I'm gonna make the whole school do it."
Yeah.
And I don't know. He kind of seems like that whole like he's got too much power.
But it's done in a comedic way.
It is.
Like,
no,
it
yeah,
is, for
it
sure.
and at first, like, he's like arguing against Latin and that it's a dead language. But then, as soon as he finds out that the teacher that he loves likes Latin, then he's like,
"Oh, we need that.
We need Latin. It's cool."
He's a man that gets things done.
Yeah.
Which I think is
and I
is
kind of
good.
respect it.
Yeah.
I mean, anything to secure the bags, I mean, I hate to call it like that, but
Yeah, talking about that montage of him and all of his extracurricular activities, he is straight up like a part of everything.
that's
Literally
what I'm saying.
everything the school has to offer. Kite flying club, fencing,
Skeet shooting.
beekeeping.
Yeah.
Like
Beekeeping. What kind of kid needs to have needs to be in beekeeping?
he's a part of
Yankee Racers founder. What the heck is a Yankee Racer, bruh?
It's the go-karts.
yeah.
Something you'd be a part of.
I think so. Actually, I would.
Isn't there fencing too?
Yeah.
Like every single sport,
You can think of
he's there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's
Chess
one that,
club, backgammon club. Yeah.
Yeah, I love and just the montage. It's like it has this title, and then it has like a very I don't know, like stylized portrait into that little
It's
that
like it's almost
that
like,
genre.
it's almost like a still life image where he is like standing like still, like I think of the astronomy club where he is like standing like in the middle with a book and like his little like red beret.
Yeah,
But then everyone behind him is looking in the telescope and they're like, "Oh," like doing little things, or like even the Yankee Racer Club. He's like
there's
sitting
cars
like
racing around him.
yeah, he's like sitting down like with the go-kart behind him with his little goggles on, and there's go-karts just zooming around in a circle.
yeah, it's
That
visually
would be
stunning.
cool.
Yeah. And I love that whole montage as well. Set to Making Time by The Creation is just like the perfect montage song, and it really like I don't know, it feels so Wes Anderson. Just this whole soundtrack as well. You got people like The Who, the Rolling Stones, the Kinks,
Ew.
Django Reinhardt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of other people who are in this as well, but just a lot of like, big name bands that were probably getting forgotten around the 90s, and he pulls these like, obscure deep cuts that most people probably don't know unless you're like big fans of the band.
True.
And puts them in his film, and he gives them like this whole new life, and it feels timeless if I have to argue for it in the way that he uses the music in his film. But I love that whole montage scene. It's one of my favorites throughout the whole film. But even before that, whenever we find out that the whole him solving the math equation is a dream.
It's a dream.
And he's like asleep currently in chapel is what they call it. And so he like wakes up because everyone starts applauding, and he stands up and starts doing it too.
Dude, honestly, that's been me before.
Yeah. And so, he stands up and starts applauding, and then all of a sudden Bill Murray walks up and he gives this speech about how, I used to go to Rushmore as well. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking that, the rich kids are here and they're going to dominate this school. But guess what? The one thing that they can't buy is backbone.
Yeah, backbone.
And he was like, I'm telling you kids, take dead aim on the rich kids. and you will survive, and like you'll prosper and all this stuff. And like Max is sitting there listening, and then he writes a note where he says like, this might be the greatest speaker I've ever heard. like,
Oh, calligraphy class.
Yeah.
He's the head of calligraphy.
Dude.
I remember seeing, because you see him like writing this like beautiful kind of penmanship,
yeah.
and then later you get the montage and it's like calligraphy class. Wow, of course,
Yeah.
he's in that.
Yeah. And so that happens, that those characters end up getting introduced, and he kind of goes up to him and is like, hi, I'm Max Fisher, and I just wanted to say I was really inspired by your speech today.
He's like,
I
you know
think
what?
you hit everything about Rushmore on the head.
Yeah, he's like, I agree with you. Rushmore is a great place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of a little awkward too, because he's just sitting there like,
Yeah.
Well, I
And
feel,
Bill
like, I
Murray's
feel
like-
like he was like, I don't know. Like,
who's this kid?
yeah, who is this kid? Get him away from me. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, but then that going into the whole montage scene of all the clubs that he's in, I kind of lumped that in as my intro there. And yeah, I just got to say I love Max and his confidence as a character, and just how zealous he is about Rushmore, and like how he holds it to such high regard that like this is his life, is going to high school here. But then as we watch slowly on throughout the movie, that becomes something that he slowly becomes disillusioned with, because he ends up getting expelled.
Yeah, which is a big bro moment.
It's just
for sure.
huge bro moments, which we can get into later. But
yeah.
and he ends up becoming disillusioned with what it is that he actually wanted in life, because now he can't go to this academy that he wanted to, that he devoted his whole life to going to. And he has to make do with going to public school and finding out what it is that he wants to do with his life.
Right.
And that's what we watch unfold
Yeah.
throughout Rushmore. So,
Good stuff.
any favorite scenes here after that?
mine is actually a little bit after that, and we get to see that he's in the library, and he is checking out a book. I don't remember what book it was.
It's called like Discoveries.
I'm calling it
in
Life
Underwater
Aquatic.
or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
the inspiration for the Life Aquatic of
That's what
Steve
I'm calling
Zissou
it.
came from this book.
Yeah, I saw that on the fact. And so he checks it out, and there's a note on there, and that's what I'm trying to remember what it says.
It's like, if you find something truly adventurous, you can't leave it to yourself or something like that.
Yeah.
It's something inspiring.
That was a horrible.
Don't quote it. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on anything.
But it's similar to that.
And he's like, oh, I wonder who this is. Like, he really, like, stood behind it, I'm assuming. And we find out it's this teacher who's teaching first grade there. And I feel like he gets in the mindset, like, I got to meet this girl. And so he finally, like, meets her in this, like, a soccer field setting. And it's kind of weird. She's about to smoke a cigarette. And he comes up out of nowhere. Again, a 15-year-old has a lighter.
Yeah.
And a teacher's not questioning him. And I was like, bruh, but who cares? And he lights it for her, and she's like, thank you. And she's like, my name is blah, blah, blah. And he goes, Max Fisher. Here's my card, something like that. The fact that he has a card with his extension number on it.
He's not a kid. He really is not a kid.
He's trying to act like
He's
an
like
adult.
a full-fledged adult.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And and then he goes back to his little corner in that place, and then she's just glancing at him, and we just get this little conversation that they have together, and it's actually one of my favorite quotes as well. And this is where we find out that he brings up to her that they're gonna get rid of Latin, and she's like, "Oh, I love Latin," like, and he's like, "Ding, ding, ding!"
Yeah.
Like,
She tells him all the Romance languages are based in Latin.
He goes, oh, yeah.
and he's like, this chick is hot, like, I'm gonna do anything to get her. And he's like, I think he even mentions to her that, like, he did, like, I brought this 'cause I saved it, or, like, I made a petition and I wrote a good proposition for it. And he says something like that, and it kind of makes, and then she says this in Latin. I'm gonna butcher it. I know I'm gonna butcher it. Excuse me. She says, Nihilo sanctum estene. And Max responds to saying, what's that? Oh, it's Latin.
Isn't it?
What does that mean? And she goes, is nothing sacred? And that I like it because it's true. It's nothing sacred anymore, because everybody's like not private anymore. So I just really enjoyed it.
Mm.
That. And you get to see how he is like in love with her already, just in this interaction.
Yeah, I even love too that after that, whenever he's like petitioning to make it mandatory
Yes.
for everybody, and they all get that memo where it says like it's now required.
7th to 12th grade.
The Scottish guy Magnus,
He's like,
is
he's
like, oh, why didn't you piss off, Fisher, you dotty wee skid mark? And he's all, is that Latin? Like afterwards.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's funny.
It is so funny
Yeah.
to see this kid flip on a dime just to please his potential mate.
Lover.
Yeah. From there, you got any other favorite scenes here?
I wanted to talk about the dinner scene after
Okay.
the play.
Yeah, I think this scene's hilarious. It's a bro
Lord.
moment in this category.
It's
for me,
kind of
but-
crazy. Throughout this relationship they have, it gets brought up a couple times where they're saying like, hey, we're just friends. There's nothing more. You know, this is like strictly platonic. Like whenever,
I think in the library.
yeah, whenever he fills her drink up and gives her the pen or whatever as she runs out.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes in that scene, actually, where Miss Cross says, "Has it ever crossed your mind that you're far too young for me?" And then Max says, "It crossed my mind that you might consider that a possibility." Yeah.
The fact that he thinks he has a chance.
He does, but he's kind of smooth with it too.
Yeah.
And they're like, you could see his love for her is growing while she's still putting him in check.
Mm-hmm.
And not working too well. But they go. He's also a playwright, so he makes this beautiful play.
Yeah.
And
It's a film adaptation of Serpico.
yes, and you get to see some of the play take place. When one of my favorite scenes is when like you see the play being done, and then you see the guy who's like the main actor come out. And he's like, "You didn't say the line."
Yeah.
And he's like, "It doesn't matter what the line was. I messed up. Doesn't matter."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm gonna let it go, but it does matter."
Yeah.
What was the line? It was like,
He was
he doesn't
like,
know a
"Every
thing or
line
two about my
matters."
cannolis or
Yeah,
something.
something like that.
Made me laugh. Anyways, the complete success. So he has this whole
Yeah.
dinner planned out with him and Mr. What's the full name?
Mr. Bloom.
Yes, Mr. Bloom
And Miss Cross's friend.
and Miss Cross.
It was
He
just
wasn't even
supposed to be
invited.
Miss Cross and Bloom.
Yeah.
Yes, and we see that Miss Cross brought a friend,
Mhm.
quote unquote friend, who knows what it could be.
It's Luke Wilson.
Freaking Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
And
Dude, I always get jealous of him with his shaved head, right?
does he look
looks
good?
He pulls it off.
He does.
Every time I see it too, I'm like, man, I should buzz my head. But then I wouldn't look like this guy. And I would, man.
You don't know until you do it.
I
Let's
just
do it
know-
together.
I know I'd have a freaking bowling
do it
ball
together.
head, man. That would,
You just missed summertime, the perfect time to do it.
yeah. Next year.
I'll
And then
do
when
it.
next year comes around, I'll say next year again.
I'll do it. I've been wanting to do it,
Never ending cycle. I
Yeah.
do too.
but I'm too. I
You gotta
know-
make it like a subscriber goal.
Oh.
Like
If
if
we
we get
get
1,000
200
subs.
we're getting close to 200, so.
If we get
No, you gotta make it
250
hard.
Yeah,
That's what
I know,
I'm
we're gonna
saying.
make
Like,
it hard. If we get to 1,000,
250.
maybe.
1,000 is pretty.
1,000 would be wild.
Well, we gotta give it a deadline as well. Well, we'll
Yeah.
talk about this. The play is perfect.
I'll do it on the pod.
Ooh. Hey. Or an extra episode or something.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
feel like during the pod would be cool. We'll watch a military movie and talk about it.
If we already didn't do an episode of American History X.
No, that's not even. That's not
I'm just
good.
joking.
That is not good.
You don't want to be associated with that.
Just joking. I'm just joking.
I went military, bruh. This fool went.
Just getting hit.
Get your mind out of the gutter right now.
Oh,
Get your mouth on the gutter, dude.
bruh.
oh, yeah, for real.
Ugh.
Give him a.
Why do you think he buys him a whiskey?
Oh,
Why do
at
you
the
think-
restaurant?
Yeah, it's
I don't
Because he
know.
thinks he's an adult.
Yeah, he does act like one.
He does, but it's funny that he can't really hold his liquor at all. So he's like, it almost looks like he's barely drinking any, and he's already like too big for his britches, you know.
Yeah.
And he sees Luke Wilson and is immediately threatened because he's like, he's taking my girl.
Yeah.
And he's immediately like offensive against him, and I love this scene that he's like, you kind of get to see his vulnerability a little bit because he's like, I made a great play.
Yeah.
And he's like getting pissed that
Mhm.
she's here, and he's so abrasive against
Yeah.
this guy.
Yeah, this has one of my favorite quotes in it too. Whenever he is trying to pick apart Luke Wilson's character, he goes, "Oh, there's some nice nurse scrubs, guy," and he goes, "Actually, they're OR scrubs." And then he looks at everyone and says, "Oh, are they?"
What a little nerd.
I started laughing at that.
That has
hard.
to be one of the funniest parts in this movie.
It was very funny.
Yeah.
But even then, like, Luke Wilson's character is just trying to ask this kid, like, anything about him. And, like, he notices that he's got, like, a bloody nose. And he goes, "Hey, what happened?" He's like, "I got punched in the face. What's your excuse?" He's just being
He
a
just
jerk
hates
to
him. He
Yeah,
just hates
'cause
him off
he's
the bat.
might potentially take his girl.
Yeah, she even tells him like, "Max, you're being rude," and he's like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
And
he
it's
goes,
just-
"I wrote a hit play.
Yeah,
And I love you."
And I'm in love with you.
Yeah.
it was just a great scene.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I agree. From there, my next favorite scene is the whole beekeeper montage, where the bees are in the hotel room.
Oh, they're kind of like getting at each other, right? Is that like
Yes.
he
The
breaks
whole
his
like
bite.
revenge montage.
Right. I like this too.
And so from this, or how we get to this point in the film, Miss Cross ends up breaking ties with both, or no, actually.
Just
Um,
Max, pretty much.
Yes, she ends up breaking ties with Max, and that hurts Max. He ends up getting expelled from Rushmore, and now he's going to public school. And he finds out that while Mr. Bloom is married and has children, he's very disillusioned with his life and his marriage, and his wife obviously doesn't like him and is talking to other men.
Yeah, I was just about to say that too.
He decides to try to pursue a relationship with Mrs. Cross after saying that he was not going to Max. And up until this point, Max has not known that they were a thing. And then Dirk Calloway ends up writing to Max and says that Mr. Bloom is a piece of trash, and he caught them skinny dipping in a pool, and he also caught them giving each other HJs and and all this stuff.
I think he said that to hurt him though.
Yeah, and he
Well,
was
yeah, he exaggerated because also a little context before is supposedly Max said that
He did say it.
there.
Yeah.
Did he?
yeah, he did
I don't
to
remember
the
saying
to
that.
the bully,
Yeah, to the
Magnus.
He did.
He said,
Okay, yes, he
I got
did.
expelled, but that's not the real reason.
Yeah, he's like, "You think that's the only reason I got expelled?
This is why.
I got expelled because Dirk Calloway's mom gave me an HJ."
In the back of her Jaguar.
Yeah, and then Magnus goes and tells Dirk.
Mhm.
That hurts him. He writes him a letter that exaggerates things, and then it ends up actually being true. Now, maybe not to the extent of what Dirk says, but it ends up being true that they are pursuing a relationship with one another and, hanging out and all this stuff. And Max goes and confronts him about it one night, and
At 2 a.m.
yeah, it goes to Miss Cross's house that she's staying at, and confronts Mr. Bloom right then and there, like while he's getting into his car, and says like, "She was mine first," and all this stuff, and they start having this like really boyish fight about whose she is, right? And then it goes into this montage of, well, I should say the montage starts whenever we find out that Mr. Bloom ends up getting divorced, and that his wife sued him for divorce, and so now he's moving into this hotel indefinitely, and he moves all of his stuff in, and then the next morning he wakes up, he's getting room service, he's reading the paper, and we see this little like shot of a bee like on the table, and it's kind of crawling around, and then it flies away, and then there's a couple other ones, and then all of a sudden you see Mr. Bloom go and like smacks his neck, and then all of a sudden starts going and gets up, and is swatting and all this stuff, and there's just bees everywhere in this guy's hotel room, and then all of a sudden he looks at the door and recognizes that it's cracked,
There's a little tube.
and there's a little tube with
Just
all these
bees.
bees climbing out of the tube and getting into the room and all this stuff, and he just kind of like looks at it and is all, "Oh,
Alright.
someone did this."
He knows immediately.
Yeah, and then it cuts to this slow-mo shot of this elevator opening up, and Max is in disguise as like a butler at the hotel, and you see this beekeeper box that says Rushmore Beekeepers Club on the side of it, and he picks it up and is kind of just walking out, like feeling like he's super cool, chewing a piece of bubble gum. And because of that, then we see this scene of Herman Bloom driving to the school that he currently goes to and looks for what he thinks is Max's bike, cuts the lock off of it, runs it over with his Bentley.
It was his bike, wasn't it?
I think so.
I don't know. He's got a bike in literally the next scene, but it's green.
It's
green.
a new one. Yeah, but he takes his bike, runs it over with his car, locks it back up, and then the next scene we see Max riding a new bike to his facility and shimmying under his Bentley and getting tools, and then what we only know after is that he like freaking cut his brakes. And then from there, Mr. Bloom is going to pick up his kids from Rushmore, and he's driving and he can't stop on the brakes, so that he's like ends up riding onto the lawn and almost killing the custodian and all this stuff. And then after that,
Max gets arrested
because Mr. Bloom calls the police on him and gives him a description and says he cut my brakes to my car. He ends up getting arrested.
Thanks, Dad, for bailing me out.
Yeah, it's just this whole scene where just like one thing after another thing just escalates until we get to someone being in jail. And it's a super funny montage, and I enjoy it as well. It's one of my favorites here.
That's good for me.
All right, but the last one here, my last favorite scene, if we don't got anything before it, is his last play that he puts on.
What about the dedicated to his mom and
about Vietnam.
Yeah. Did it have any significance at all?
Maybe to Mr. Bloom because he served in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
He says he has that line where he goes, "Were you in the crap?" And he goes, "Yeah, I was in the crap."
At the end of the play, dude, it kills me too because you see Mr. Bloom just go.
Yeah, he stands up and is just all. Any favorite scenes after this or before this?
No.
Okay. So this leads us to the end of the film where we've gone through a ton of character development, and this is Max's last hurrah to put on a play. And he ends up doing it with his new public school that he goes to, Grover Cleveland High School. And the play that he puts on, I think, is titled like Heaven or Hell or something, and it's supposed to be based in Vietnam, around the Vietnam War and all this stuff. And I personally love how elaborate everything is. Like even when we see his adaptation of Serpico and like the like subway that's in the back and like how elaborate they make it look and all this stuff, just the attention to detail here was just cool. But seeing this like jungle like scape that they make, and then this little like helicopter that flies around in the background on a track, and the explosions they get to come off on stage and everything. Even the whenever Max comes out and gives like a foreword before the play, and he's like, "There are safety glasses and earplugs under everyone's chairs if you need them."
Feel free to use them.
I was like, how is that gonna make sense?
Yeah.
And then it made sense.
I was so confused too because a little bit before the scene we get to see him buy a big old box of dynamite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was unsure of what that was going to be used for.
Yeah.
And we finally, I feel like this is what it's for.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, and just seeing this whole play take place and seeing Max be in his element, putting together these stories and not only acting in them but also directing them. Even seeing Magnus, the bully, in this story get a redemption arc, and like him saying that like I've always wanted to be in one of your plays, and like that was the reason I was mean to you this whole time, is because you never picked me to be in your play, and now that I'm in it, like I feel like we could be buddies now.
We're
like,
chill.
You know, we're chill now. We're cool, and not only seeing Max put on this play and him getting to do what he loves, but also him like stringing together events where like Mrs. Cross and Mr. Bloom will sit next to one another in the play and have a moment with one another where they can apologize to each other and, you know, start off with a clean slate. And then when everything eventually ends, everyone coming up to him and giving him his congratulations and saying he did a great job and all this stuff, and him not being afraid to tell people who his dad really is and what he does for a job. You know, in the entire film he's lied and said that like, oh, my dad is a neurosurgeon, and he, you know, cuts into people's brains for livings, and tries to make it seem like he is just this, guy that makes so much money and all this
because I don't
crap.
think he tells him that he was on scholarship.
Yeah, he never reveals to anybody that he's on scholarship besides Mr. Guggenheim,
Yeah.
who knows. And he tries to spin this narrative that, like, he is just as rich as everybody
Yeah.
else there. But his dad is a barber. And I love seeing at the end where, he finally gets to introduce his father to some people and says, like, this is my father, and he's a barber. And, like, he's gone through so much character development at this point in the film where he takes pride in where his dad has come from and what he does. And he even tries to do it himself for a little bit, like, and quitting going to school and trying to pursue becoming a barber just like his dad. And he, starts giving Margaret the time of day and starts saying that, like, this is my girlfriend. And, he grows so much throughout the course of the film. And to be able to see him go through all of this growth and then end up sharing a dance with Mrs. Cross at the end that is, like, strictly platonic, and they understand each other finally, to that song, I Wish I Knew What I Know Now. It feels so incredibly earned by the end of it, and I'm smiling, like, super
Yeah.
big by the end. And it's an incredible ending, really, to such a fun film. And I think it's another one of those things that you can really love about Wes Anderson films, where you can go, like, as deep as you want with it, or you can, keep it at a basic surface level and just have fun.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real good ending.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that is majority silly and just a good old fun laughing time, but it also does have some kind of serious moments, some darker moments that characters really have to confront their emotions and their traumas in a way I think that's touching, kind of heartfelt.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think we might touch on when we get to pro moments.
Yeah, more than likely. So if that's it for favorite scenes, let's move into best quotes. I've kind of hit all of mine already.
Yeah, I hit my favorite one.
Yeah, the last one is I saved Latin. What did you ever do?
That's a good
He's
one.
telling Mr. Bloom that.
That is a good one.
It's my favorite.
All right, that's it for best quotes. Then let's get into bro moments. My first bro moment was Ronnie and Donnie, the twin brothers that Mr. Bloom is their kids. They're his sons. Whenever he goes and picks them up and he asks them about Max, he's like, "Hey, did you invite Max to your birthday party?" And they tell him, like, "Are you kidding me? I would never invite that kid." And
There's
one of the
gonna be
kids,
girls.
yeah, and he's like, "There's gonna be girls there." And then one of the kids like, "Yeah, pull your head out of your butt, Dad."
Yeah.
And then him like turning around and attacking
Trying to wring his neck.
is so funny to me.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that Bill Murray does so well, where he does that, like, silent anger, like, and the way he reacts to certain situations and just his physical acting in those scenarios and everything is just always so funny to me. Yeah. What's next?
My next one is Matt. When he is talking to Mrs. Cross, he is feeding the fish with her. He goes up and says, "Oh, do you need any help?" And she's like talking. And when she finally says, "My husband," he has this container of fish food, bro, and drops the whole thing
Oh, he
in the
does.
fish
Yeah,
tank.
he does.
Yeah,
He has
And
to
then
fish it out.
he tries to fish it out, but doesn't. And then he looks at it, and then closes the fish tank, and kept on going. I said, "Bro, overfed these fish. They're gonna get so fat."
That's
Well,
funny.
It just made me laugh. That's promo for me.
My bro moment is when he's starting to petition to get an aquarium.
Oh yeah.
He goes to Mr. Bloom and he's like, "I need a lot of money."
Yeah.
$35,000 just for the.
Just to
Plan.
start.
Yeah, but he gives him like
He's like, "I'll give you
2,500.
$2,500." He's all
deal. But he's like building this thing. He has got all the plans. He's got all the contractors. He's like gonna break ground soon, and he hasn't even told the administration at all.
Yeah.
Well, because Mr. Bloom is some part of the school committee or something like that, I think. So he was like, "I'd rather go to him." There's a part where it's like, "Why are you coming to me?"
But he never goes. He's like, "I want to go to you first to keep this under wraps so I can get everything like
exactly.
as much prepared as possible before we go to the administration."
Yeah.
And they don't ever.
He
get
does
there.
everything. He does everything without telling the administration. That's why the older Wilson brother, I think Andrew, Andrew Wilson,
yeah,
the guy
yeah,
with the mustache,
he's the
coach.
coach.
The gym teacher or PE teacher, whatever he is. He comes out and is like, "What are you guys doing with my baseball diamond?"
We're gonna relocate
And he's
it.
like, "Oh, we're gonna relocate it. This is gonna be the site of our new aquarium." And he's like, "I didn't even know this was happening." And then he goes and gets Dr. Guggenheim, and like right as they're about to, they start cutting down trees and stuff. And
Yeah.
everything. He's like, "Turn those chainsaws off!
Yeah.
What are you doing?" And that's how he ends up getting expelled.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about whenever Max gets wrecked on that wrestling mat?
Dude.
Yeah. He
I
sucks
didn't
at
even-
wrestling.
Dude. Yeah, so Mr. Bloom is watching his kids in the wrestling match and everything, and then all of a sudden, the ref is like, "Number 12." And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I got to get in here." He like takes his clothes off. He's got a singlet under. He's like, "You're on the wrestling team too?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm an alternate." And then he's like, "Hey, how are you? Nice to see you." And he like shakes his hand, and right as he's about to get in there, that kid just
Bodies.
boom,
him.
like flips him hard.
Mhm.
It's pretty funny.
My next pro moment is Max faking that he got hit by a car
Oh
and
yeah.
going to Rosemary's house.
Oh, that's deep. Yeah, it's deep. Because I still got a few more.
Really?
Yeah. What about whenever the whole aquarium scene? Whenever we find out that Miss Cross is a widow, and that we also find out that Max's mom is dead.
Yeah.
She died
Mhm.
of cancer. But the way that he addresses the situation, he's looking for some sort of common ground that they have, and he goes,
We
"Huh,
both
we both have dead people in our family."
Oh my God.
Also, doing Serpico as a play is hilarious as it is. What about Dirk spitting on Herman's car? Whenever,
That actually, yeah. Wait, Dirk threatening
Dirk
him.
is a homie.
yeah,
Dirk is for the boys.
yeah,
Mm.
and he finds out that like he's like, "I know about your relationship with
He
Mrs.
just
Cross.
stands
I
in
want you
front
to
of the
stop."
I'm not gonna say anything, but it needs to stop.
Yeah, and then he goes, and spits on his car and walks away.
Yes.
Super funny.
I laugh at the affair scene when he like meets the wife on the rooftop and he's like, "You want a sandwich?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, sure."
Yeah,
And he's got tuna and
he's like,
peanut
"You want
butter.
tuna or peanut butter?"
So gross. Why tuna? The worst option.
She picks it, man.
Yeah.
I would have gone for the donuts. There's donuts in the middle.
Yeah, that was a whole bro moment in that scene too, when like the cops come by and it drowns out all the sound and everything.
Yeah, and you don't hear what he tells her.
Yeah,
And she says thank you.
yeah. But then the next scene, you find out she's filing for divorce because that's when he's getting put in the hotel and all that stuff.
Yeah, 'cause I was gonna say because we get a scene of the twins' birthday party,
Mhm.
and he's
Which
by-
reminded me of The Graduate
That
when he jumps in and he's staying underwater.
yeah,
and
it
just kinda
does, huh?
Sitting there a little bit.
mm-hmm.
That reminded me of The Graduate in the aspect of like feeling disillusioned, right? Like seeing that your wife is unhappy with you and actively talking to somebody else. You hate your kids, and your kids hate
kind of
you.
don't respect him.
Yeah, and like you have all of these things, but no one is around you. Like everyone else is mingling. No one wants to talk to you specifically, and you are just alone amongst all of these people. And them like doing that homage to The Graduate as well, because The Graduate kind of hits that same note in the scene that I'm thinking about, where he puts the wetsuit on and everything.
Is
Mhm.
in, yeah,
It's the same exact theme, but yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, and we see his wife just talking to some other guy in front, like you said, in front of him, and it's just I wanted to bring that up because I was like, I thought they were married. So then finally seeing this happen, I was like, finally, like he literally was seeing her cheat.
Mm. Yeah, it's even interesting too, like noticing that the mom and the kids are the only ones that have red hair,
Yeah,
and
he
he's
doesn't.
the only one that like doesn't. So like, it even drives home further the point that like
He's not.
he is the outcast.
Yeah.
He is the one that is separate from everybody else here in the family.
Yeah. Man, what about that scene when Max was trying to kiss her?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I was
that's-
gonna say. This is where I'm at now. Whenever
That's-
he fakes getting hit by the car.
Yeah,
And like brings his jacked up bike and puts it right under the spotlight.
No. Don't they kiss there?
No, but
He
he
does
he
kiss
kissed her. But
No, there's that one scene where like I think it's in the classroom.
Oh, where he
Oh, no.
tries to force it.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Do you want to have sex with me?" And he
What
was
are you
like,
gonna tell
"That's,"
everybody?
"That's a cheap way of putting it," but
she goes, not if we.
he's
not
like,
if
he's like,
you
not to
haven't
somebody
effed
who's
before."
yeah. That
Yeah.
whole scene is wild.
Oh,
too.
it was
Where she
so
really
awkward. Where he
confronts
like
him.
goes for it and it just feels not okay.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, my last one is whenever he fakes getting hit by the car.
It puts the little
Yeah,
tape
he
in.
gets in there and he's like, "Yeah, I got hit by a car," and she's like, "Oh, come in," and he's
Runs in there.
yeah, he runs in there, puts
Ninja
a tape
moves,
in
yeah.
puts a tape in there. He starts playing it and lays down and is like, "Oh man."
This is where it all starts.
He goes,
Yeah,
I heard you left, what's his name? And she goes, what does that have to do? She goes, and he literally goes, I got hit by a car. I'm trying to make sense. Like, bruh.
yeah, yeah.
That
But
was one of my big bro moments was him kissing her.
yeah, him putting the moves on
Yeah.
is wild. And like he eventually does plant one on her, but it's one of those things where she's like,
Not.
"What are you doing?
Yeah.
You and Mr. Bloom deserve one another for how childish you guys are acting.
Yeah.
You need to get out of this house
Yeah.
right now." And yeah, that's a whole bro moment as well. But that's the last one for me.
The last one I have is spending $8 million on that new
on the
aquarium.
new aquarium just for her not to show up.
Yeah,
and he's
he's
like, "I'm a fool."
I spent $8 million on this. I was like,
And he was like, that's all you're prepared to spend?
yeah.
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, even their whole little montage thing where they're running through the factory with the pipes
Yeah.
is funny too. I love that.
I have two more bro moments. One of them is when, what's her name, comes to the house to bring him,
Margaret Yang.
Margaret Yang
Oh, the
comes
plans.
to bring him like a little succulent, and says,
You can't really hear what she's saying either, too, huh?
No,
It's like
the
music.
music is playing over it.
and so the dad's like, oh, he's not here, blah, blah, blah. And as she's walking away, she's still looking at the house, and the window's open. And this fool's just
In there.
Yeah.
looking at her. And she, like, waves, and he doesn't wave back. And then he shuts the blinds.
He's a.
Yeah. And it's because he's obsessed with
Yeah.
Yes.
Mrs. Cross. He's not thinking about Margaret. He wants Miss Cross.
I know.
I know, but I wish he would just be like, I can't. I gotta.
Yeah.
I like someone else.
Yeah.
And then
What about the graveyard scene? Whenever he goes to his mom's graveyard and he asks Mr. Bloom to meet him there.
and then
Yeah.
he's about to knock
And
a
he's
tree.
like, yeah, and he's like, the only reason I asked you to come here is because I was going to have that tree fall on you. And he's like, but now I'm thinking about it and it feels kind of dumb.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the point? He's like, no. But
Yeah,
like,
what's
what's
the point?
She's
We
my
even-
Rushmore.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a good quote too.
That's
Yeah.
Where he
such a good
says,
quote.
She's my Rushmore, Max. And he goes, I know. She was mine too.
That hurt.
Tough.
It's tough.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's one spot that Mr. Bloom starts smoking 2 cigarettes at one time. He,
Oh, in the
They're
elevator?
Go to the hospital.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So
It-
funny.
it made
He's
me
like
just
pouring Jack and Diet Coke and all that stuff.
made me just shook. I was like, dude, what are you doing? You literally have 2 cigarettes in your mouth.
Yeah. That is funny.
And that was my last bro moment.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm done with that.
Alrighty. If there's no other bro moments, let's move into some facts with the bros.
Yeah, let me hit you with the budget. And to make this movie on IMDb, it says it was $9 million. Opening weekend, it made $43,666,000. Gross for U.S. and Canada made $17.1 million. And gross worldwide made $1,196,000. What am I saying? 17,196,000. That's what it made.
17 milli.
Nice.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and this was a huge success compared to Bottle Rocket. And that's one of the things where I'm kind of like, I wonder why this one hit so much differently
I'm gonna look up how
than
much
Bottle
Bottle
Rocket,
made.
because Bottle Rocket was a freaking flop compared to Rushmore, and it blows my mind that he was able to get another chance to make another movie just based on the performance of Bottle Rocket.
I don't know.
But yeah,
I don't know who the producers are. Who would even fund it?
it was. I actually have a fact about this. Let me
Oh my
pull it
gosh,
up here.
yeah. Bottle Rocket was a big flop. I don't remember that being that bad.
Yeah. So, let me pull this up here. There we go. So originally the film was going to be made by New Line Cinema, but they could never agree on a budget whenever they were in talks of doing so. So Wes Anderson, Owen Wilson, and producer Barry Mendel ended up holding an auction for the film's rights in the middle of 1997 and ended up striking a deal with Joe Roth, who was then a chairman of Walt Disney Studios.
Oh.
And this here says that they settled on a budget of $10 million.
Okay.
But yeah, even then, that budget up ended not being able to cover everything, because whenever Bill Murray ended up reading this script and getting his hands on it, they didn't have enough money to pay him, but he thought that it was so fantastic that he ended up wanted to do it so badly he just ended up doing it for free. And this has since then built Wes and Bill's relationship. This was the starting point right here, was Rushmore, and he has been in almost every Wes Anderson film since then.
A freaking lot of them.
Yeah, and Bill ended up liking Wes Anderson so much that, like, on the first day of principal photography, Wes ended up delivering his directions to Bill Murray in like a hushed whisper, because he's like so in awe of Bill Murray and was just so excited that they ended up getting him. And Murray ended up, taking this to heart and really liked the way that Wes directed, rather than, being like super obnoxious about it and everything. So he ended up deferring publicly to Wes Anderson, and it ended up helping him haul equipment. And I guess there was a scene too whenever a helicopter shot was supposed to be used or was wanted, and Disney ended up denying it because the shot was going to cost them $75,000. Bill Murray went up to Wes Anderson and gave him a blank check to cover the cost of the scene and said, "Do what you need to do
That's cool.
in order to get the shot." Yeah. So they have just ended up finding this camaraderie with one another because of this film, and now they have this like beautiful relationship with one another.
There you go.
That's
cool.
crazy. Imagine someone handing you a blank check and be like, "Do what you gotta do."
I'm using all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might even take some cheddar home.
Yeah.
I had read that 1,800 teenagers auditioned for the role of Max, which blew my mind. That's an insane amount of people. Also, Elijah Wood
Audition for Max.
auditioned for Max. Yeah, he was
Who's that?
among the teenagers.
Frodo.
You don't know who Elijah Wood is? You gotta watch. What's that movie you love? Where he's a freaking weirdo in that movie.
Oh, Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He's in that too. Where he
Yeah.
tries to like become.
Yes.
He tries to become Joel.
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah.
Imagine him being Max.
I couldn't.
Me neither.
Could not do it.
He's got that. I don't know. He's
One that
Yeah.
I thought was kind of a bro moment fact was the Rolls Royce used in this movie. The owner of it let them use it in exchange for his daughter to be in this movie.
Was it a Rolls?
Bentley, excuse me.
Okay.
Bentley.
That's
So-
crazy.
Imagine.
who'd she
being like-
play?
I don't know.
It's probably some extra.
Someone. Yeah, probably some extra.
They just put her in there somewhere.
Yeah,
But-
'cause on here, what are you gonna credit her as? Bentley,
Bentley girl.
owner's daughter.
Yeah, it's true.
Hey,
Yeah, I mean, if it's any way that like you can like skimp on like renting it and using your budget to get this specific vehicle in the film, and all the guys like, hey, just let my daughter be in it.
hey, all right.
Like, okay, we don't got to use money for it. Cool.
Easy.
Like
Yeah.
that's super.
I don't know. I
easy.
feel like what if she didn't want to?
That's true. Another thing that I found out about the film that I thought was pretty funny, actually. I guess Bill Murray actually found Keith McCauley and Ronnie McCauley, who play his sons in the film, genuinely annoying. And he, I guess, improvised a lot of his lashing out and insults at them, at least from what we see in the film. And all that stuff like of him like lashing out and like trying to attack them and insulting them and stuff like that is not in the script at
Really?
all. And is like
He's just
from,
genuinely
from his mind.
pissed.
Yeah, and is like
It's like, you
genuine.
mother-
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Another one that I thought was really cool actually was the setting for this film, where Rushmore is actually the high school that Wes Anderson went to in Houston, Texas. It's called St. John's School in Houston, and he hired actually a ton of students from the school to play as extras and even gave some of them major speaking roles in the film.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Apparently the last fact I have is that apparently some of the pictures in Mrs. Cross's room were of her dead husband, obviously because it was his room, but they were pictures of Owen Wilson.
He's supposed to be Edward Appleby.
I think so.
That's funny. A couple more here that I have, and then we'll move on to the next category. In order to drum up publicity for the film, Wes Anderson decided to do things the old-fashioned way, and he traveled across the country in a tour bus that was fitted with 2 big-screen televisions, VCRs, a CD player, cell phones, a satellite dish, and a PlayStation. And he went around the country and just promoted the film that way. And this is largely in part due to him not being a huge fan of flying. And then I also was surprised to see that the screenplay to this movie was actually written long before Bottle Rocket was ever written. And that this was like the first one that him and Owen ended up working on together before Bottle Rocket was ever made.
Dang.
And then lastly, that shot of Max Fisher sitting on a go-kart wearing his pair of goggles is actually a recreation of a photograph that was taken in 1909 by a French photographer named Jacques-Henri Lartigue. And he's a child prodigy who I guess started taking pictures around the age of 7 or 6 or something like that. But whenever we get that shot of him sitting the way he is in that go-kart, you see 2 go-karts flying around in the background. And the 2 people that are driving those go-karts are Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
So they're zipping around in the background there.
That's funny.
Yeah. That's it for facts for me.
One that I thought that was kind of cool and kind of odd because this person is like known for like kind of like children's books was Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson mentioned that Ronald Dahl was inspiration for this movie. And Ronald Dahl has some inspiration for another one of his movies, which is Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, it's straight up
Oh, yeah.
an adaptation
Yeah.
of one of his books.
And it just
Yeah,
kind
that's a great movie.
it just kind of blew my mind because I think when I hear Ronald Dahl, I think of like my elementary time
Mm-hmm.
and this
Charlie
movie.
and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, like Matilda and like
Mhm.
James. No, I don't think James and Giant Peach is his.
No, I think it's Tim. Well, I know. Doesn't
Tim Burton directs it. I think that might be a Roald
Yeah, that is
Dahl
his.
book.
That yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
And I don't know. I thought about that. And I was like, that's crazy. I would never link Rushmore with Ronald Dahl
Mm.
at all.
All right.
Yeah. Any other facts here?
That's it.
All right. What didn't work for this movie?
I didn't have anything to
yeah,
be
I got
honest.
nothing here either.
I thought this movie was. I didn't. To be honest, it felt timeless. I didn't think this movie was an hour and a half.
Mm.
I thought this movie was less. When I finished watching it, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, you really do get in and out.
Yeah.
And I can't think of
I really
anything
don't have
that
a
for me
problem.
personally that I don't enjoy about the film.
Yeah, I can't think of anything either.
Okay.
It didn't stew long enough for me to really articulate.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I kind of want to defend how in the beginning I said I kind of hated Max, but throughout the movie I end up loving him.
Mm.
So obviously now I love this kid.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning I hated him
Okay.
because of what I saw. But that was just my first view of him,
That's an arc. That's
Yeah.
what we call it.
and that's
That's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And now I love this kid.
All right. Well, if we didn't have anything that didn't work, what does work?
I want to say the humor in this film it hits.
It hits.
It
It really
hit.
does.
And I laughed quite a bit. And I think I want to say, like, I think you even said it, this has to be one of his funniest films.
Yeah,
think
and that's just my opinion. You guys are
No.
obviously gonna have to watch
gotta
a couple.
rewatch.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
watch a
gotta watch
couple
more
more
of
of them. And
I haven't
and
seen,
see.
I've seen 3 of his films.
Okay.
And I think I laughed the most watching this one.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just again my opinion.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the writing here.
Yeah.
I think Wes and Owen are a phenomenal team, and they really do have like the same sense of humor and the same sense of style when it comes to writing as well. And I think that they really strike this perfect balance of like silliness and endearment.
Yeah.
And it again is it's that perfect line where like it never goes too far into where this is too silly
Yeah.
and never too far into oh, we're trying to get some tears out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is always towing the line, and it plays on it a lot. And I really think that it's done masterfully in that aspect.
Yeah, I'll say one of the main reasons I agree with you is because of Olivia Williams playing freaking Miss Cross. I think she is crucial for bringing that levity, that like, you know, heart to the film, because I think of that scene where like you hear Bloom talk about how they broke up because she can't get over her dead husband.
Yeah.
And it's a fair thing to not get over right away, you know, but you know, she's still in love. She's in love with the dead guy.
Yeah.
So whenever Max approaches her in a room, she's like, well, you know, he's like, you still live in his room, like you're not over him, you know.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see her, you know, confront that that sadness.
Yeah, and like she even holds Edward to such a high regard where she says something to the effect of like, Edward had more talent in a fingernail
some
than,
like imagination
than
thing.
like Herman Bloom will ever have in his entire life.
Right, but it's almost like she's not allowing herself to
To move past it.
to move past or to connect with anyone, because she's like, well, no one's ever going to be as good as my dead husband.
Right.
That's why whenever he says like, she's like, yeah, nobody's like in his fingernail, he's got all this, but
It's
he's
a
gone.
dead fingernail.
A dead fingernail, he's gone.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
there's no point in comparing him to your dead husband. No one's going to surpass that.
Yeah.
It just was a great part of the film. I think it was really needed to cut a lot of that really like naive kid,
Mm-hmm.
you know, humor, and to bring some heart to it.
Yeah.
It kind of makes him look like he is an adult, because he was like,
This is not a kid.
Yeah.
Especially a 15-year-old. This is
He thinks
This
he's
is
an
a-
adult.
yeah,
this
he's
is
kind of
little
hard.
man.
He's kind of hard to describe, honestly, because he's really ambitious, but like still deals with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's why him being Max and Herman Bloom end up like becoming friends and fighting with one another, because they are the same person.
Yeah.
Like it's just in different bodies.
Yeah.
You've got a kid and a grown man who feel like they've got everything figured out, that they have all the stuff that they want in life currently, but they don't in reality, and they think that filling this void with a woman is going to be the answer to their problems.
Yeah.
When in reality, that is far from what the issue is. And they both end up taking inward looks at themselves and doing a ton of character growth throughout the film, and recognize at the end of it that, like, I cannot attain the happiness that I'm looking for until I work on myself. And, like, I need to, better myself before I can, attain this goal that it is that I'm looking for. And that starts by me treating people correctly. That starts by apologizing to people and righting some wrongs and doing all of these things. And, we watch these characters do that by the end of the film. And by the end of it, I'm watching them all dance on that dance floor in slow-mo to that incredible song. And I got a big old smile on my face.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Also, gotta say, as per usual, incredible cinematography. And I think it's really cool that Wes continues to use the same guy that he started with on the director of photography side of things. But this film specifically is where he stepped into what would become his visual style, but it still has that sort of like rawness to it, where like not everything is perfect. It would be in like the Grand Budapest Hotel or Asteroid City or something like that. But this is genuinely where you can see like where he had vision for the way that his films would look. And it's again only been perfected since then. But yeah, really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah. It's not much to say other than it's a Wes Anderson film.
Yep. Really great soundtrack, great acting. I love Bill Murray in this.
Yeah.
I just love Bill Murray in general. But
I agree.
But he's great in this. Jason Schwartzman, it being his debut film here, he does a great job too. And again, would go on to do a ton of other movies as well that he's done really great in too.
Yeah.
So
Blows my mind.
yeah, really enjoyed it. If that's it for what didn't work, or what did work, excuse me, who wins this movie?
I'm saying Jason Schwartzman.
I am too.
He is immediately, when I think of Rushmore, I think of this little kid who's
With
just
the glasses and the beret.
Yep, and that like blue suit thing that he's got.
Yeah. I wanted to say Bill Murray, but I think I'm going to say Jason Schwartzman.
Yeah.
Okay. Any themes here?
I mean, the more I come to think about it, the more it's like the way. I just think they're just all lonely.
Yeah.
I just feel like they're all just so lonely
Mhm.
in their own unique ways, and they all try to cope with it in different ways, but they're just lonely.
Yeah.
I think that you just got to find something. For this one, is just finding something you love.
Mm-hmm. And doing it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and doing it for the
That's
rest of your
it.
life.
Got it
For
all
me,
figured
that's
out.
Rushmore.
Yeah.
For me, I wrote down, I'll read it here, taking pride in where you come from and getting to know yourself better. At the end of it, that's kind of what I got from it. So,
Yeah, for sure.
all right. With that being said, what are we rating this?
You're looking at me first?
Hey,
Dang.
I'm just looking around.
I gave it a 7.
Okay.
I'm giving it a 7.
Okay. I'm gonna give it an 8.
All right.
All right.
So, all right. With that being said,
That's it.
that's it. It's the end of the film or the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you guys stuck all the way to the end, we appreciate you. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a like, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so that way you're notified whenever we upload. And if you're listening on the audio platforms, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, etc., hit us with a rate and review. Let us know what you're thinking. Use these platforms to let us know what you guys are liking about the episodes, what you're not liking, how we can make things better, film recommendations, things of that nature. And if you don't want to hit us up on a public platform like that, you can click into our episode descriptions and follow us on Instagram or reach out to us via email and let us know what you're thinking that way as well.
Yeah.
So, as always, we're going to reveal the next pick for next week, which is Nick's pick.
Is my pick. I am picking a movie that I've been very curious about. It is streaming on Mubi, and it came out in
What is that?
20. It's I've heard it often enough to.
Mubi is pretty credible. It's on the same level as like the Criterion streaming channel.
Is it?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, it's a movie that came out in 2022 called Decision to Leave. Now, you might be like, what the heck is this movie? If you know at all the movie Old Boy, this like high esteemed movie about,
Yep.
it's like a thriller revenge story that is supposedly a masterpiece
Yep.
from the director of Park Chan-wook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that same director also directed this movie, which is why at all I am looking at this movie.
Yep.
I've heard good things. I've heard that it's a mystery thriller.
Yeah, it says a
Mhm.
romance mystery here.
Yeah, romance mystery. It is, I think, in Korean.
Yes.
We haven't done a movie like this in a while,
Yeah, I'm excited.
and I have been meaning to get to it.
Me too.
So hopefully I can watch Decision to Leave and also watch Old Boy, just so I can get a brief,
Introduction to Park Chan-wook.
yeah, and see kind of what his style is like, if it's consistent throughout his movies.
Is Old Boy his first movie?
No.
He has a couple.
Yeah.
A lot of them, unfortunately, are very hard to get.
Yes.
They're not very hard to get. You just need to get a DVD player that's region unlocked,
Yeah.
and I don't
And-
have the funds for that.
Yeah, me either. I unfortunately got a copy of American Psycho that's European, and I
You put it
can't-
in, and it's
I
like
can't watch it. It's like your region code is not.
stupid.
Yeah, I don't even know why it's a thing. dude.
And
It's annoying.
almost all of the copies I've seen of
Piracy
Old
is
Boy,
not a victimless crime.
you own it. You
What?
could. Oh no, that's with emulating it.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. Supposedly, there's a lot of twists and turns for this, and
Yeah, I'm excited too because I always heard a lot about it when it came out last year, but it was just one of those movies I just never got around to watching. And the only Park Chan-wook movie that I can say that I have seen is Old Boy.
okay.
So if you do end up watching this, Old Boy's been one of those movies that I have wanted to do an episode on since we started this podcast.
And now
And
it's
I remember wanting to do it whenever it was streaming on Shudder.
yes.
And like then for the longest time, couldn't find it anywhere.
No.
It just got a re-release
Mm-hmm.
digitally, and it was like it did a small little run in theaters. If it ever comes back to streaming platforms, because whenever I watched it, it was on Netflix, and I was still with my parents at the time.
Okay.
It freaking blew
You're choosing
my
it?
mind. And as soon as it comes to streaming platforms, I'm choosing it. We're doing an episode.
Here's
on
the
it.
thing: it's available to buy.
Yes.
So no, I don't know if it's ever going to become rentable, but
yeah. And that's
if
the
you're
thing is
willing to buy it,
yeah.
I have bought in it, so I can share my passwords with you.
Okay.
But I'm just
If it ever becomes widely accessible again, so that way people can see this film because they should, then that is the only green light that I need to do an episode on Old Boy.
okay.
But we're talking about Decision to Leave here.
Yeah, Park Chan-wook.
So, yeah, I'm excited to watch it. I also saw here, just a quick Google showed it is also streaming on Amazon Prime,
Oh, is it?
potentially.
Yeah, that's what I saw too.
So if you have Prime, you could potentially watch it there as well. But check out Decision to Leave and tune in next week to hear what we have to say about that film. As always, this has been the Film Bros Podcast. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Good night.